Good evening, Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to Salam Media. I'm the host of your sports talk this evening. I go by the name of Dakir Dawood, and I'll be taking you through the next half an hour as we have a very special guest with us tonight. He hails all the way from Port Elizabeth, the city currently in the naughty corner, as per Cyril Ramaphosa's speech last night. Well, it's been a tough week for everybody out there. I mean, the COVID numbers are spiking, and we've recently seen one of our international matches, the Proteas, who were to take on the English today at Newlands in Cape Town, being postponed due to COVID being rife in the South African camp. But let's not delay any further, as we are running a few minutes late. Um, Coach, good evening. Thank you so
Evening,
much.
sir.
Thank you so much for taking the time out of your evening for joining me. I really appreciate it.
No problem, no problem.
Coachy, we live in such strange times now. I mean, where would you have ever thought on a match day, an international match of this magnitude, South Africa taking on the English at the Newlands Stadium, the beautiful Newlands Stadium that is, would be cancelled moments before the first ball is bowled. How are you adjusting and adapting within the franchise camp with regards to COVID being around?
Yeah, look, it is a challenge. It has been a challenge since the start of the season. We've also had our own cases of testing positive a few days before matches and then having to isolate them and test them again on the eve of matches to see if we can select them and whether they're going to be clear, obviously, before the matches start. So it has been a challenge, and as you say, it is sort of different circumstances compared to what we're accustomed to.
Yeah, no, certainly. I mean, who would have ever thought? But Coachy, I mean, look, cricket season's going. I mean, there's been phenomenal results all around in the domestic side of things. And on the international front, we've been struggling quite a bit. However, we have no doubt that South Africans would obviously bounce back. However, that's not what we're here for this evening. This evening, we're here to celebrate you and your career that you've had in cricket. Coachy, I mean, you've been for years in the game. Where did your journey start exactly?
It's taking it back, or you're going to make me feel old now this evening, taking it back that long. But yeah, look, obviously I grew up in Port Elizabeth. I played most of my professional career in Cape Town with Western Province and the Cobras. But later on, I did return and finish off my career in South Africa with the Warriors in PE. But that's where it all started for me in Port Elizabeth. Obviously, Gavin Cricket Club, which is quite a renowned club around the country, community-based club. My father, my brother, my eldest brother played for the club. So obviously, from a young age, I was in and around the club at the time, and that's where it started. Suppose in the club, but also for many of us in terms of how we grew up in our communities back in those days. For many of us also just in the street and in the park where we lived, wherever we could find a patch of grass, I suppose, in the park, in the schoolyard, in the street, as I said, anywhere really where we could play.
Then we fast forward like a good couple of years, and I mean, you've made your first class debut. What was that like, and where exactly did you make that debut for those of the listeners and viewers of Salam Media that are not too familiar with who Coach Ashwell Prince is?
Yeah, so I think my debut was I was in the in 94, so my first class debut was in 1995. I was still 18 years old at the time, so as I said, I started out with EP. In those days, the B-side matches, or the second, or yeah, I suppose now it would be known as the senior provincial matches, yeah, because we now have franchise cricket. So in those days, it was the B-side. Those matches were first class. So I made my debut when I was 18 in 1995, and then soon after that, I was still 18. I made my debut for the A-side, which as professionals we regard as our real debut because, South Africa is the only country in the world that has two sections that has first-class cricket, which is a little bit unfair, the rest of the world will tell us, and I tend to agree with that. So we talk about your real first class debut is when you play for the A side, and that was in the same year, 1995, for EP. So yeah, that's it. It's a long time ago.
Coach, it's been quite a while. I mean, 1995 to the time you made your debut for the Proteas. What happened in that time period, and why did it take so long, if I may ask? I mean, you certainly have been putting in performances after performances that made you worthy of being in the national team. However, it came rather late in your career.
Look, I mean, I was only 24. Yeah, it does seem late. I mean, I made my test debut in 2002. You
Mm.
know, for some people it might sound, um, I would say that a first class debut at 18 is quite young. So if you look at it from that perspective, let's say the average guy makes his debut in first class cricket at 21, 22, and then at 24 play for the country. So yes, I did spend a few more years playing domestic cricket, but even I think sometimes the general public and the fans, I think sometimes they misunderstand what it really takes to be a professional, and maybe there's a school of thought that 2 or 3 years after making your first class debut, you should be playing for the country. Cricket is really a tough sport to be a professional in. It's a really technical sport. I find it amazing that people always say batting is technical. I think bowling is also extremely technical. So, in terms of mastering your skill in the game of cricket, it takes time. Batsmen will tell you that as a batsman, you probably really only get to your best when you in your late 20s, so 27, 28, 29, sort of in that age. In that age group, and there's a lot of maturing that needs to happen in the game of cricket. You need to understand the game. You need to understand your game as well as an individual. You need to know your strengths and your weaknesses. You need to know all the strengths and weaknesses of all the opposition bowlers that you will be facing. And there's a lot of analysis and things that go in. I mean, these days it's obviously done technologically. In those days, it was all done in terms of your own programming, if you like, where you have to um, memorize the bowler that you play against. You got to kind of identify their strengths in matches. So next time you play against them, that's kind of the stuff that we do now with technology. But in those days, you kind of had to formulate those programs for yourself in terms of analyzing opposition and stacking up your library, if you like, for the next time that you're going to be playing against those guys. So, and then, like I say, learning about your own game. There are the exceptions to the rule where individuals sometimes come a year or two coming out of school and then make it into first class cricket and then take into international cricket. But as a general rule, I'd say that's the exception to the rule. Most guys spend quite a bit of time in domestic cricket before you get a call up. I think other things that you need to consider is also that, let's say you're a middle order batsman like I was, you also have to consider what other players in the national team doing at that time that's batting in your position. So you might be playing well domestically for your province or your franchise, but the person who bats in your position for the national team might also be doing well. So just because you're doing well doesn't automatically mean selection for you. You've got to wait until there's a gap, and unfortunately, professional sport is quite useless in that way. So you're kind of sitting there waiting for somebody to lose their form so that you can get a chance, and that's basically how it works. And yeah, I mean, I suppose other people get opportunities through injury. You don't want to wish that upon any of your people that you're competing against, but that's also another way that you get an opportunity.
And for many of for the cricketing lovers that are tuned in right now, who was the guys that you could say stood in your place, or you were waiting to fill the boots up in the national team setup? Coach, you there? I think we just have a problem with signal at the moment, but that's Coach Ashwell Prince that we've got on the line, and he's giving us a bit of a synopsis of how his cricketing career went. Before we get into how his coaching career is currently going, he's currently with the Cape Cobras, and they busy preparing for a domestic series. But they have been playing a few test matches, 4-day first class matches, and it's going quite well on their side. They recently announced the sponsorship of Six Gun Grill, which did take up the title sponsorship of the team, and also the Newlands Stadium, which is now known as the Six Gun Grill Newlands Stadium. Quite interesting times in sport. I mean, Coach Ashwell Prince had an illustrious career. I mean, there's so many questions we could ask him. If you have any questions, pop it in the comment section below. And also, you can call in as well. We'll make sure that we get hold of your questions and we can relay them over to Coach Ashwell Prince and see if he's comfortable with answering them. It's certainly going to be an interesting evening with him indeed. We're going to cut to a quick break. When we do come back, we will have Coach Ashwell Prince on the line.
Medical Depot, conveniently situated in the Duzimed Medical Center, corner Burger and Bossel Street, Pietermaritzburg. We provide safe, affordable, and convenient medical facilities, open till 10 p.m. every day of the year. We have a full house clinic that operates from 2 p.m. to 7 p.m., which is run by a qualified sister. The clinic offers immunization, vaccination, wellness, general consultation, and more. Call Duzimed Medicine Depot on 033 3421 Duzimed Medicine Depot, your pharmacy of choice.
There are an estimate of 153 million orphans worldwide. Change their lives by donating towards our Orphan Kind program. For 750 Rand per month, you can be the reason an orphan smiles. Go on, be Orphan Kind. Visit www.pennyappeal.org.za or call 031 11 00 573 to find out how you can help save these children's lives. Penny Appeal. Small change, big difference.
Breaking stereotypes, moving boundaries, joining hands. Salam Media. Humanity sets the agenda.
Welcome back to Salam Media. We cut to a short ad break just for Coach Ashwell Prince to get his breath back. We're joined by the Cape Cobras, or the Six Gun Grill Cape Cobras head coach Ashwell Prince this evening. Before the break, he did share a bit of his introduction to cricket and how he made his first class debut. And now we're going to a bit further on into his career. Coach, thank you for sharing that insight with us. I mean, it's certainly valuable information that a lot of the youngsters can take a note of, because we live in this instant gratification era and generation where everything happens just so quick, and you've really showed and told them how you've had to stick it out before you got your first appearance that was for the EP team. Coach, let's move forward a couple of years. I mean, you've now been hitting the stats and breaking records on provincial level. You now get a call up to the national team. I mean, what was it like when you got the call that you're going to be in the national team set up and you're going to make your debut?
Yeah, look, I mean, that's obviously quite exciting, and it's everybody's dream. I think when you're a youngster and you want to play professionally, I think you want to play it's everyone's dream to play for the country and represent the country and try and do your best, you know. So it was no different for me. I didn't really have much time to think about it, to be honest, because I was called the day before the test match. There was an injury in the national team to Justin Ontong. I was called up to join the squad the day before, so I had to fly to Joburg the afternoon before the match started. Fly to Joburg. I got there the evening. I missed the team meeting because I arrived quite late in the evening. I remember getting to my room and all my clothes was there, my practice clothes and test match clothes, warm-up kit and all that type of stuff. And then the next morning, sort of came down, breakfast, went to the ground, and then the test match started. So there wasn't really a lot of time to think about how it's going to go or what it would be like. It wasn't much of a build-up. It was just, quite a late call-up, and then I had to be ready, really. But, the week before, that's obviously against Australia. A week or so before, I did play in Australia's warm-up match, but before the first day. So their warm-up match was against the South African A side. So I scored. I was top scorer in that game for the South African A side, 90 odd against Brett Lee, Glenn McGrath, Shane Warne, Dizzy Gillespie. So when I got called up for the Test match, although it was a little bit rushed, I was quite quietly confident because I had put in a good performance against those guys, and I knew I could deal with their bowling attack.
Certainly. We just want to welcome all the listeners out in Durban on Al Ansar that just joined us. We're joined by the sixth gun Cape Cobra's head coach, Ashwell Prince. We're chatting to him about his career in cricket and the highs and the lows, but currently we are chatting about his debut for the national team. Coachy, you playing against the Brent Lees, the Glenn McGraths, you know that these guys are coming at you. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, Shane Warne could have possibly been in that lineup as well. What was one of the most difficult, or who were the most difficult bowlers that you faced in your career?
I'd say out of all the cricket that I've played, two of the toughest bowlers probably that I've, two of the, if I say five, there was five really tough guys to face. I think two of them would have been in that lineup. Glenn McGrath from a seam bowling point of view, just in terms of being relentless, in terms of line and length, and hardly ever giving you, scoring opportunities. You really have to be decisive in your decision making, whether you're playing, whether you're leaving, whether you're defending. You can't sort of be half-hearted, because if you're not committed, he'll probably get you, because he's so close to the off stump all the time. And so, just from a relentless line and length, discipline, sort of always asking questions point of view, testing your technique, probably Glenn McGrath. And then as far as spin bowling is concerned, obviously Shane Warne was most batsmen's nemesis. I think I'm the person that he dismissed most in Test match cricket. So, it was a struggle initially against him, and more so when there was rough. You can go on YouTube now for those who didn't get the opportunity, for the younger listeners who didn't get much opportunity to watch Shane Warne. If you go on YouTube, there's some videos, ridiculous videos of him getting all the batsmen in the world out, basically. And when the ball, and somebody like him bowling, his leggies and googlies and his flippers and all those type of things, and they're landing in the rough. Sometimes from a batting point of view, it's really a guessing game when you're trying to figure out how much that ball is going to spin out of the rough. And you know what they say about fast bowlers? They say if you can't play short pitch bowling, then people will be able to kind of see that you're scared. But but what they say about real good spinners, if you can't play really good spin bowling, they can make you look silly. And if you go and watch some videos of Shane Warne bowling on YouTube, batsmen kind of leaving the ball thinking I've got it covered, and then getting bowled around the legs type of things, all those type of things. So, when somebody like him pitching it in the rough, that in Test match cricket, that's one of the toughest challenges that I found.
How many times did our South African batsmen get caught out for that? But look, Coach, you've obviously then went on and you made history in South African sport. Our country has come a long way with regards to transformation, inclusivity, and then you came along and you sort of put the cherry on top, if we can call it that, for what all of those before us fought for. You then went on to become the first black captain of a South African national team. Was there a lot of pressure on you?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it's obviously an honor to be the captain of the national team. But from the outset, it was only going to be for the one series because obviously the captain was injured, so I had to stand in for that series. But nonetheless, it was still a proud moment for me. You know, I always played the game from a perspective where whether I was just a player in the team or a captain or a leader or a vice captain, I always played the game where I wanted to captain from my own space, my own position, wherever I feel that, I suppose you get people who just kind of focus on their own game. For me, it was always like, how can we get this guy out? How can we break this partnership type of thing? So even though I would have played in teams where I wasn't the captain myself, that was always the way. Cricket is a lot like chess. I mean, it's like, what's the next move? Who can make the best next move? And Test match cricket, especially, is that one-day cricket is kind of predictable sometimes. White ball cricket, we get a time and told next. The last 2 overs is going to be bowled by these guys because they're the best specialists, etc., etc. But when it comes to Test match cricket, it's really like a game of chess, and it's attritional, and who's going to give in first, that kind of battles. And ultimately, you want to be on the winning side of those battles. When you're making decisions, you want to be on the right side of making decisions. So, that type of element of the game always intrigued me. So, it was an honor to captain the country. But like I say, obviously, it was only for those 2 Test matches.
Well, I mean, it counts just like a debut, whether it's a minute or a second. That goes down in the record books. But no, certainly. Coachy, I mean, look, you've now obviously went on and you captained our national team. You then had a or let's say you had a moment that stood out for many. So during your stint in the ODI team, you had the numbers 5 plus 0 on your shirt.
Yeah.
Can you please explain what was the reasoning behind that numbering being on your jersey?
So like I said, number 5 was always my favorite batting position. And if I could, I would have just had number 5. 5 plus 0 is 5, obviously. So, but the number 5 had been retired kind of unofficially. I should say unofficially retired by the national team's management. And they felt that they wanted to do that, with respect to Ansi Cronje, who wore number 5 before. And obviously, not long before I made my international debut, obviously, Ansi sadly passed away in a helicopter crash. So the number 5 had been unofficial. It wasn't official from CSA's point of view, but from the team management, unofficially they retired the number 5. And so actually the idea I saw from, I think it was one of the a Chilean. I'm not sure if it was a Chilean or, but it was a South American football. I'm very big into football, and one of the players that played in the World Cup, either for Chile or one of the other South American countries, and then I think he played for Inter Milan, and he was always a number 9 for his country, and number 9 was taken at Inter Milan, so he had number 1 plus 8, obviously. So that's where we had 18. But 1 plus 8. So that's where I saw the idea. I think it might have been, I can't remember the player's name. It might have been Zamarano, speak under correction. But yeah, that's where I saw the idea.
No, thank you so much for giving us insight on that. I mean, it certainly had a lot of people talking about having a lot of people talking. I've ran earlier on. We've opened the questions to some of the supporters and fellow journalists on social media, and one of the questions we got in all the way from Cape Town from a guy by the name of Mubin Mohammed. He wants to know, what was your favorite highlight as a Proteas player?
So yeah, look, I mean, I've scored 100 at Lords, scored 100 at SCG. But something that kind of means a lot to me, having always been a team player, is that I was part of the team that became number one in the world. For me, it was always more about what we did as a team, as opposed to what did I do as an individual. I know that I wasn't a world superstar, whatever the case may be, but um, I was part of a very good South African cricket team. And for a long time, we went unbeaten around the world, touring places, Australia, England, subcontinent, India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, all over. And we went unbeaten for a long time, and for that to culminate in the South African team becoming number one in the world, and knowing that along that journey, you made some meaningful contributions to help the team to become number one in the world. That is, for me, the highlight, because, as much as individual performances stand out, yes, cricket is a team sport, but, your personal averages, your personal batting and bowling accolades, people will always talk about that. But still, for me, to be part of a team that's like, you're the best in the world. That's what it's, that's ultimately what it's about for me. Being part of a youth that can compete. As a child, all I ever wanted to do, and you mentioned before, coming from the backgrounds where we came from, we know what it was like growing up in those communities. We know what apartheid meant to us, coming from those communities and being labeled as second grade, third grade citizens, or whatever the case may be. So, coming from that kind of background, all I ever wanted to do was kind of go and test myself against the best in the world and prove to the world that actually, the people that come from my neighborhood and similar neighborhoods, no, we're not second grade citizens. We can do our job within the Proteas, and we can assist the team to become the number one team in the world. And that's something that hopefully people see that I've played my part in that, and hopefully younger generations have been inspired to go and do better, which they have. And I'm really proud of that. And I'm referring to people like Hashim Amla becoming the best batsman in the world. I'm talking about Vernon Philander becoming at the top of his game, becoming the best bowler in the world. I'm talking about people like KJ Rabada, that is number one bowler in the world. So, looking back now, I'm really proud of what those guys have also gone on to achieve.
No, certainly. And I mean, it was guys like you that obviously broke stigmas and broke barriers down so that the next generation can walk on smoother ground and they won't have as much obstacles in their way. Whether it's existent or non-existent, like many would call it, we put obstacles in our way. But yes,
Yeah.
I mean, it's guys like you that have opened up doors for the generation to come. And we thank you for that. We really do. Coachy,
Yeah, look, I mean, I wouldn't put all of the credit on my, I was also inspired by people before me. I mean, there's people like Roger Telemarcus, Henry Williams, Paul Adams, Herschel Gibbs. These guys, they represented the country a little bit before me, 4 or 5 years before me. So, I was inspired by them. And then, all I wanted to do was, walk in their kind of footsteps and prove to the world that, we, all of us, those names that I just mentioned now, we come from a certain background, and that we can hold our own within the national team and against the players, around us.
Oh, I think we just had a breaking signal there. But we certainly will get the coach on the line with us in just a second.
I'm here, so I'm here. Can
Oh,
you hear me?
yeah, the line just cut for a second there. Sorry. So, yeah, Coachy, I mean, you've obviously played at the highest level, and you've obviously then went and you're currently coaching at franchise level, which is, let's say, the second highest level. Now, I want to ask you a question from a fan's perspective. You've played in many World Cups. You've mentioned
Only one.
okay,
I've
only
only
one,
played in one.
only one, only one. you've watched many World Cups. So have I. South Africa has managed to be on top of the rankings for long periods of time. Um, what is the reason why we just can't seem to take that success from series series right into the World Cup?
It's complicated. It's really complicated. We have, I believe, we had even in those days, and we still have some of the most exciting talent in the world. When you watch the IPL and things like that, obviously, you look at India with a little bit of envy in terms of how many young players they have coming through, playing such high level of cricket in the IPL. We had a similar concept with our MSL the last 2 years. Unfortunately, we won't have it this year. But the sort of cricket, from the overseas players, especially the overseas players, because they play all around the world. And to a man, they were saying that the standard in our MSL was really, really up there with the best tournaments in the world, and probably second best to the IPL. Now, the thing is that we have the cricketers, we have the talent, but we got problems, and that's the reality. We got problems, and we're not very good at solving problems. Let me just leave it there. We're not very good at solving problems. We're not very good at communicating about those problems and finding the best solutions for them. And that's sad, because ultimately, the people that miss out are the players, and the damage is done for the players. They're the ones who miss out. I mean, we had a domestic T20 the last couple of years. We've had overseas players playing in it. People saying it's the second best competition in the world after the IPL, but this season we don't have it. And who suffers? The players suffer. Our players will fall behind because they don't have these tournaments. When you have 4 or 5 quality international players from around the world coming into our dressing rooms and spending time with our young players, we can see what it's done for the young Indian players. And that type of thing has rubbed off on our young players here. But now this year, we don't have the MSL. Okay, we can probably argue that a big reason for that is COVID. But these tournaments are still happening in other countries around the world. They're getting it right even with COVID. So we create our own problems, and we don't fix it. And then, it lingers and the players suffer. I mean, I just spoke to one of my players this morning, at breakfast just before we flew out. And for the last 4 or 5 years, domestically, Cricket South Africa has been saying we're actually moving back to the old provincial setup. We might do away with the franchise setup. What that has caused, and the knock-on effect of that, is that because of all the uncertainty from CSA of whether we're going to change or whether we're going to stay as franchise players, if for the last 3 or 4 years, all the players have been on 1-year contracts. Now, what is the big impact on that? Well, the big impact is, you think about it. If you're in a normal job and you're working as a permanent employee, if you're going to try and buy a house or a car or whatever, you can go to the bank and get a loan. Well, our players cannot go to a bank and get a loan when at the start of the season, they only got a contract for 12 months. And in April every year, the contract they don't know if it's going to be renewed. Everything depends on how they've done in that season. And then the next year, they get another 1-year contract. And then the next year, they only get another 1-year contract. All because there's so much uncertainty in terms of where our cricket is going. So, a lot of our problems we can solve ourselves. But like I said, we're not very good at solving problems.
No, certainly, and I think it's certainly a topic of conversation, but obviously for another day. Coachy, I mean, I know we've got limited time, but this question just has to be asked. You've now talked about players getting 1-year contracts and uncertainty about their future. Do you think that is why a majority of our players are going overseas and signing callback deals or signing longer-term contracts? Because just for the fact of stability. Because as a sportsman, you've got a plus minus 10-year, 12-year, let's push it to 15 career lifespan. And if you're not certain about where you're going to play your cricket next season, you might just find yourself having to put your trade down and actually go find a normal 9 to 5.
Well, I've got a different opinion about Kopak,
Mm-hmm.
and it's maybe an opinion or a narrative that you won't necessarily hear, because people like to put whatever spin they want to put on it.
Mm.
As far as Kopaks are concerned, I don't think that you can point out to one name that has been a first choice regular player within the senior national team in any of the formats that signed the Kopak deal. What I mean by that is everybody who signed the Kopak contract are people who are not first choice 11 in the Proteas team.
Mm.
So because they've tasted international cricket, they're an attractive player for a county. The county makes an offer. That player might not believe that he's going to dislodge a Dale Steyn or a Vernon Philander or a KG Rabada out of the national team. And you know what? Sometimes whether players like to hear it or not, they take the soft option and they take the Kopak option. That's my narrative on the Kopak. Now, does that harm our system? Of course it does, because if a Vernon Philander and a Dale Steyn and a Rabada is injured and not available, you'd like to have that player around because he's probably next in line. But now he's in England playing on a county deal. So whereas people are saying, yeah, they didn't have a future in this country, I think that's not always 100% the truth. I think a lot of the people that's left as Kopaks, they look ahead of them or they look into the Proteas setup and they think, I can't displace those guys. I'm not as good as them. And that's a fact. That's a fact. Most of the players that have left, they're not as good as Dale Steyn and Vernon Philander and Morne Morkel and KG Rabada, and then they leave. And that's a decision. So for me, most of the time it's been a calculated decision by the player and his agent or manager or whoever that might be who makes that decision. And they realize they can't replace or dislodge those players, and then they make that decision. And then, the sad thing is that they get to the other side of the world and they don't give the full story. They don't give the real story of why they left. They give another story. But that, for me, is the real reason why people leave. So, you can go and make more money overseas by playing county cricket, kind of knowing that I'm not going to displace any one of those bowlers that I just mentioned now. So you either sit and wait in the wings, or you believe that you can actually be better than those names that I just mentioned and that you're going to dislodge them, or you take, for lack of a harsh word, you take a different option. So that's my narrative on the Kopak. Does it harm the system? Yes, it does, because the system needs it. You need your second best players. The Proteas need their second best players, and of course the domestic system also needs those players to be playing week in, week out domestically. But I don't think you always get the full story on why people leave when they're going to go and play county cricket,
But I mean, I think obviously the contracting model should be relooked at, and then it might just give players that sense of stability. But like you said there, we live in a generation where everything is instant gratification, and if players see that they can't or they won't break into the team within the next year or two, and here someone flashes a carrot or maybe a couple of pounds in front of them, they might just make the move sooner than expected. We had actually one of your captain's uncle asked, actually, are you guys winning the treble this season? And he's not talking about cricket. That comes from Pubi Hamza.
Yeah, we will have to we'll have to get all those injured players back to have a chance. But I would love nothing more than sort of Virgil van Dijk being just ready in time just for the Champions League final. That would be nice.
Oh, it certainly makes sense. I mean, Liverpool's obviously playing with their reserve tank. I mean, probably the under-13s having a run out every weekend and still managing to stay top of the log. I mean, what phenomenal performances week in and week out. But Ashwell, back to the cricket. Let's get into the nitty-gritties here. Okay, so now we've got a question from a journalist from Cape Town. He goes by the name of Irfan Kasim. He wants to know, what is your view as a coach regarding selecting black African players versus colored players, especially in Cape Town? A player like Jason Smith, for example, cannot make the Cobras team. The same reason why Matt Plainveld, Lizard Williams, and Dayan Khalim had to leave Cape Town to get regular game time.
You said that you're not gonna be making controversial comments or questions on yours, but now you listen here. I would really, I'll let me answer you like this. I would really like to know what the director of cricket's opinion is on that question that you just asked. That's what he's been very quiet of late. I haven't heard or seen much of him. I'd really like to know what his opinion is on that.
And I certainly
Because
think
ultimately,
yeah.
I'm just a coach. I've got to coach all the players, and I've got to try and get the best out of all the players. So I'm not part of policy making. I've been trying to get invited to meetings where these kind of decisions are being made to make a contribution to South African cricket. As you said, you know, we all played and represented the country for a period of time and played in the game or in the system for a long time. So we feel that, for all the coaches, we feel that we have some value to add to the system, but we don't often, or most often, we don't get invited to these to where these decisions are being made. And unfortunately, you know, our opinions then doesn't really matter. So I really like to hear what the director of cricket thinks about what you just asked.
No, certainly. Thank you so much, Coach, for actually making it clear to myself and the rest of the public. I mean, the person who asked the question can certainly knows now which avenues to take in order to get an answer for his question. Coachy, we can talk all night. You recently assigned, well, Zubair Hamza was assigned the captain of your team. Such a young player taking up a captaincy role. What was the thought process behind this?
Yeah, look, he's a very good batsman. He's a student of the game, and so I thought that he's ready for the job. Yeah, he started actually doing the job in one-day cricket for us last year, and he performed really well as a batsman. He was for the most part of that domestic one-day competition, the Momentum Cup. He was the leading run scorer. He was just beaten in the end by 8 runs, I think. The Rulofson, the guy from the Dolphins, beat him by 8 runs in that competition. So the captaincy didn't really affect his batting last year. And this year we decided to make it permanent. So if anybody is trying to suggest, which I don't think you are, but there will be people out there suggesting maybe the captaincy is affecting his batting this season. Well, last season when he was captain, he was the leading run scorer in one of the competitions. So I just think he's going through a little bit of a bad patch in form at the moment, as far as the 4-day cricket is concerned. And there isn't any player in the world, including myself, and whoever you think the greatest ever player was, that didn't go through a bad patch of form. So yeah, but he's, like I said, the reason he's obviously one of our key players, and he's a student of the game, and that's why we made him captain.
No, thank you so much for making it clear. And we're certainly looking forward to watching how he excels and how he grows as a cricketer and as a leader in the role, in the captaincy role, and obviously with the amount of responsibility that you've given him. Coachy, your season's just kicked off. Before we let you go, what can we expect from the Cobras come the 2020-2021 season?
No, look, I mean, it's been a slow start for us to be second in our group at the moment behind the Titans. Obviously, there's been a bit of a restructure this year. You've got 3 teams in one group and then 3 teams in another group, and then the person or the team that tops the group plays in the final in the 4-day competition. They have the same structure for the 50-over competition, Momentum Cup, and then the T20s will be slightly different. So we're sitting second behind the Titans, so we have to top our group to get into the final. And there's 3 games left in that. So hopefully we'll be able to catch up some ground and just put them to the post in terms of our group, and then we'll have a chance to fight it out in the final against whoever's top in the other group. And then, like I say, in the 50-over competition will be a similar type of format. And then the 20 over competition will be a shortened, only a one round, I think 5 matches only in that. So, look, we've got some exciting players. At the moment, I'd say we're probably firing only at about 2%. We had 3 draws and 1 loss so far in the 4-day competition. So, yeah, we're playing okay in patches. We're not playing okay for long enough in the 4-day game to win a 4-day match. So, hopefully, we can find that rhythm soon enough.
No, definitely. And we certainly wish you all the best of luck for the rest of the season that is to come. I certainly look forward to catching up with you again. I will be in Cape Town on the 26th of December. I'm going to be hosting a gala dinner, and I certainly look forward to seeing you there, coaching. Um, I'll pop you a WhatsApp later with all the details. But yeah, thank you so much for your time this evening. It was lovely chatting with you. Thank you so much for being so open with the public and giving them the answers to those difficult questions that they have, instead of everybody just running with rumors and thoughts and speculation. You finally came to the table and given everybody the facts. Thank you so much. I hope you have a good evening further, and thank you for joining me.
Thank you. You're welcome. Pleasure.
That was the Six-Gun Cape Cobras head coach, Ashwell Prince, talking about his cricket career, where he started out in Port Elizabeth, and then going on to be the first black captain of the South African cricket team. And then he goes on and tells us about his journey through coaching and the waves that he's making in the coaching industry at the moment. Currently, head coach of the Cape Cobras. Well, that's it from myself, Vakir Daud. I'm going to be leaving you guys in the safe hands of Safaras Takolia, who will be taking over after this. We're going to cut to a break, and till next week. That's it from me at the Sports Desk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Listen to something fresh.